Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purani Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitaamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Yatapatra Neyatra Yena Tvaya Bharatataila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanai Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanora Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Thank you for joining us. We're now in the middle of Lord Krishna's explanation about the demonic nature, which in Sanskrit actually means the demonic wealth. It's the kind of wealth that nobody really wants to have, but that's how they phrase it. And this is, now we're approaching the middle of the 16th chapter. We may have even reached it already. So why is Krishna talking about this demonic nature? Well, it's certainly not for developing such a nature, shortcuts to becoming a demon. No, it's for avoiding these characteristics. And surprisingly, we will find a lot of them in ourselves. Maybe not so surprisingly if we have a lot of self-awareness, but it is interesting to see Krishna calling all these familiar friends of ours like anger and jealousy as demonic qualities. Really makes you think over, how we have a lot of work to do, but once you know who the bad guys are, it's easy to kind of work on them. So Krishna says that these kind of demonic people cannot accept the existence of any kind of God, and they have no regard for any scriptures either. The only thing that they accept is something that is logical or scientifically provable, but nothing that requires any faith, because they don't have faith in anything except for their perception, what they can see or feel or hear. Their five senses, that's the only sources of information that they accept. So they have the same intellect that we do, but that same intellect that is meant for us to reach everlasting happiness, for them it becomes a weapon to engage in endless atheistic arguments. And you may yourself have had such an experience. I have had many experiences all over the world. Some people just can't accept it, which is okay, but someday they might, hopefully. And when they are completely adamant, they will say that there's no place for God in this whole universe. Why not? Because all the positions are already taken. They're not hiring a God. They don't need God because they have matter, they have electromagnetic force, they have gravity, and they don't question how all these came about. They just said they're there, so we don't need a God. Well, and if you ask them what happened before then, before the Big Bang, well, they might have some ideas. There was a singularity, but they don't know the cyclical nature of creation and destruction. So what was before the Big Bang? Not quite sure. Even after the Big Bang, they expect us to believe that everything is kind of happenstance. It's a coincidence that we find ourselves here on the planet together, and everything is perfectly balanced. Once somebody posed that question to my ethics professor in college, and he was saying, this is all just random. It's happening on its own. And the professor said, that's like saying you put a band of monkeys in a room, give each one of them a typewriter, let them bang on it for a few decades, and you're going to end up with Shakespeare's King Lear. It's a pretty good likelihood that you could end up with the King Lear, right? The ironic thing is that the one who came up with the theory, survival of the fittest, who was that? Charles Darwin, right? He has been quoted as saying things that sound strangely like Amma, initially. I'll share a few quotes. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. This is in the 19th century, there's a lot of gender bias. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Wow. It's a good observation. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others. He's done some self-reflection, right? The sad thing is his conclusion was, the mystery of the beginning of all things is unsolvable by us. And I, for one, must be content to remain an agnostic. At least he didn't say atheist. But he can't figure it out. Agnostic means you don't know. But he doesn't recognize that somebody else might know it. That is also off the table, right? So the main point is that one part of humanity believes in a higher power and is willing to submit to that power, at least internally, with some kind of humility and a sincere yearning to understand the ultimate goal of life. And the other part of humanity doesn't have that inclination. They don't understand that there's something beyond all these worldly pleasures, nor that there are more satisfying and subtle experiences when you live a dharmic and spiritual life. They can't see that contentment is the ultimate goal of all material pursuits anyhow. That means that running around to increase all your possessions simply delays that very same contentment. Such people were called hedonists in Greece and charvakas in India. For a materialist, security and enjoyment are the only possible goals in life. There's nothing else on their agenda. But in the course of pursuing these goals, they end up creating a lot of suffering for themselves and others, as we'll see today. Those of a divine nature, however, have a much simpler life, and they get good sleep at night. No problem falling asleep. And people are always drawn to them also because they feel the peace and contentment of those people. Does that ring a bell? Anybody that, does that? But demonic people won't even let other people pursue dharma and moksha. Okay, let them not pursue it themselves, so why do they have to stop other people from doing that? That's just how they are. So with no higher goal in life, they just go back and forth, get money, spend money, get money, spend money. I don't say earn money because, as you're going to find out today, that's not their favorite thing to do. Krishna does not say, after all this explanation, Krishna does not say that we should abandon all forms of enjoyment, because even the Vedas recognize enjoyment as being something that's okay. And it comes in the Gita. It came a long time ago in chapter 7, verse 11. Krishna says, in beings, I am desire, unopposed to dharma. So it should be desires that are in line with dharma. Dharmic desires. Are there such things as dharmic desires? Yeah. Want to take a shower? You know, you want to brush your teeth, you want to eat something every once in a while, maybe you want to have a family. There's nothing wrong about having a family. So these are he doesn't call them dharmic, he says they're not opposed to dharma. Okay, so those kind of desires are recognized. It's perfectly fine, as long as it is not harmful to yourself or other people. And it shouldn't obstruct anybody's spirituality. So that means that pursuing wealth itself is not against dharma. The problem starts when it becomes an obsession. And even rituals can become a kind of obsession, to the point where their spiritual growth stops. They can be so obsessed about rituals that they just lose track of this goal of life. And that was really what was going on around the time that Shankaracharya came. And some say that it was during Buddha's time too, and that was, Buddha was a reaction to the kind of flawed culture at that time, not the whole Vedic tradition, but anyhow, that's another story. So this is when artha and kama, that means security and pleasures, or we could say enjoyment, become enemies to spirituality, and they become a kind of a spiritual materialism when you just go for ritual, all kinds of pujas and homas, just for the sake of them, not for any other sake. Not that they're bad, but when you get obsessed, yes, they're like a detour. So here, you may have heard that word, spiritual materialism. And examples would be, just like you have a baseball card collection, you can have a guru collection. I go to Amma, I go to this, I go to that, I have got 15, man, I got all the baseball cards of the gurus in my back pocket. Or flashy attire with so many Rudraksha malas, really big Rudraksha beads on display, not inside, right? Or you might want a building named after yourself because you donated some money towards the construction. These kind of things are examples of materialistic spiritualism, or spiritual materialism. And it's a more subtle ego, so it's harder to remove as well. So let's try to avoid that. The next two verses go together. We'll read them together and go over the meaning together. We're going to go slowly because it's not easy to read all this stuff. Idam adya maya labdham idam prapse manoratham idam astidam api me bhavishyati punardhanam. Next verse. Asau maya hata shatrur hanishye chaparanapi Ishwaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. Now we'll read both verses slowly together. Idam adya maya labdham idam prapsye manoratham idam astidam api me bhavishyati punardhanam asau maya hata shatrur hanishye chaparanapi Ishwaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. So as you continue to look at the verses, we'll look at 13. And I have made a little bit of a editing there. These are quotes, really, actually. It's not, yeah, we say, right, they say to themselves, we have it there, good, on our book also. But it's not actually in the text, it doesn't say they say to themselves, but just so we know that it is a quotation, that Krishna is imitating what the kind of things they say. And I just deleted much because it's not there, and it seems to be good without it. And already mine on the next line. The already is kind of an addition, but it does help understand the English. And this verse 14, I did not change. So we'll read through it. This has been secured by me today. This desire I shall obtain. This is already mine, and this wealth also shall be mine. That enemy has been killed by me, and I shall slay others also. I am the Lord of all. I enjoy. I am successful, powerful, and happy. Well, I would say this is a pretty clear megalomaniac. Let's see what the commentary tells us about the meaning. Shankaracharya says, people who are going to, I will slay others. And he says, in the coming year that he's going to slay more people. This wealth also shall be mine, and thereby I shall be known to be a man of wealth. So he's explaining their rationale a little bit. And Jnanadev, we have got lots of Jnanadev in store for you tonight. He says, demonic people say, today I have grabbed the riches of many others. How glorious! The more he indulges in such glorification, the more his mind goes in that direction, and he tries to rob even more people. He further says, with the money I have acquired so far, I will get everything in the world. In this way, I shall become the one and only master of the world's riches. I will not spare anyone who comes in my way. So a lot of emotions are wrapped up in this one paragraph that he says. You have jealousy, you have competitiveness, you have anger, you have avarice, almost all of the 6 enemies. So this is the first of 3. These 2 are the first 2 out of 3 verses that talk about how these people speak. And so Krishna is revealing to us their thinking process. That's the thinking process of the demonic people. So what kind of thoughts go through their mind all day long? And this is what it is. So after all, one's thoughts reveal and determine the character of a person. It reveals your character initially, and the more that you have such negative thoughts, the more it determines your character. So the thoughts are really important. And so he's giving us a snapshot of their thoughts all day long. So this is, we can turn this methodology backwards, and we can do the same thing for ourselves. We can try to keep a journal or a diary of our random thoughts throughout the day, if we have the courage to do so. Just even while you're in the shower, you'll probably find that you thought of so many things in the course of 5 minutes or however many minutes your shower is. And that'll tell us which category we belong to, the divine or demonic category. So Krishna is saying that these demonic people are thinking how to trick and swindle people out of their money. But interestingly, we say that karma, whatever you do comes back to you. Well, trickery can also be used for the sake of dharma. You might wonder why. I looked it up. I was curious, how can we use that trickery to catch the people who are tricking other people, swindling other people. Some interesting stories. 1985, a brand new airline began running what looked like a promotional gimmick. They mailed out letters that promised a free weekend trip to the Bahamas for each lucky recipient. But despite having a very realistic looking ticket counter right next to Air Haiti in Miami International Airport, Punyo Airlines did not really exist. The plan had been cooked up by the US Marshals Service, which had sent out the letters to more than a dozen fugitives. Fugitives means people that are on the run, running away from the police. So they picked up these people in a limousine, and as soon as they got in the limousine, they arrested all of them. See, what was the bait? Desire. Because there are demonic people. You say you're going to give them money, you're going to give them something that they will definitely have a desire for, drugs or alcohol or something like that, and then it's very easy to catch them. Same thing happened to revelers who traveled from around the world to attend a wedding aboard a luxury yacht off the coast of Atlantic City. They can do some gambling too. That's what demonic people like to, I guess. This was in the summer of 2005, but they were all in for a surprise. The couple that many of the guests, the couple that many of the guests had known for years was actually a pair of undercover FBI agents, the groom and bride. And the celebration was a sting operation targeting an international smuggling and counterfeiting operation based out of China. It led to the arrest of 87 people in Canada and the United States. So this goes to show that in this birth or in another, these adharmic people will eventually have to experience the fruits of their own karma. Maybe not this time, sometime. So these swindlers and cheats, they accomplish many things through their unjust means. They satisfy a lot of desires, they accumulate a lot of wealth. So are they happy? Nope. Why not? Because in the process of fulfilling one desire, they create 10 or 100 more. So they're always thinking about the next thing, some greater pleasure of some kind. Now just think, we already have a very difficult time. Everything is volatile in the world because of COVID. So people must be getting very nervous about their investments, their 401k. I can't even remember the name of that, so it shows that I don't have one. They were nervous about their cryptocurrency, their job security. Amma says that this is like a game that people play on their phones. They're like looking at the stock market. It becomes an obsession. But we should not forget that planning for your family is obviously fine. And that's something that you actually do intentionally. Sit down, have I set aside enough money for my kids' college or whatever it is? That's, intentional. But allowing yourself to become nervous all the time and nervously checking the stock market every few minutes, this is an obsession. That's not planning. And but for people like me, really, it's just like watching a movie. It's like up, down, wow, that's really cool. Because we don't have any possessions. But these people are so attached to their possessions that they become slaves to them. So up to here, in these two verses, it's been about desire, what we call kama. Next, Krishna is going to, the second half of those two verses, which is verse 14, is about anger. That's why he said that enemy has been killed by me and I'm going to kill other people, etc. So what Shankaracharya says about this part of those two verses is, again, he's speaking in the first case for those demonic people. That unconquerable enemy has been slain by me. So that means I must be really great. And I'm going to slay others also. What can these miserable people do? They're helpless, right? I'm so strong. There's none equal to me in any respect. Why? Because I am a Lord. I am successful in every way. blessed with children and grandchildren. These are demonic people who are proud of their children. They're not eating them, at least. I am no ordinary man. I am strong and healthy. I guess that was important 5,300 years ago. And Jnanadev says, I haven't killed very many of my enemies yet, but I will kill many more of them, and thus my fame will resound throughout the world. Then I will kill all my remaining enemies, and you got to just complete what you started, right? Except for those who become my servants. Then shall I myself become the God of the entire universe. How many people tried to do that? The British Empire, the Mongolian Empire, the Genghis Khan, Russian Empire, Chinese empires, they all tried to conquer the whole world. Nobody came anywhere near. I think the UK was the closest. I think it was about, at most, 1/4 of the world they had control over. Anyhow, it's a crazy idea in the first place. And he says, I shall be the king of this earth of enjoyment and the home of all pleasures, so that even Indra, the god of gods, might look insignificant before my glory. There is no one other than I whose commands are obeyed implicitly. I am the sole repository of the cream of all the happiness in this world. Not just the bottom of the, happiness, the cream of the happiness. Okay, so they think about who their competitors are, who might be an obstacle, an enemy, and if someone makes more than them, they become very jealous, and that turns into anger, and then there'll be some kind of climax like extortion, or they destroy the person's business, burn it down. That's happened quite a lot. And if that doesn't work, they just destroy the person himself. So we see that all murders, except for people who are completely deranged, take place due to greed, desire, or anger. These are the main things: kama, krodha, lobha, the first three of the 6 enemies. And if these people had any goodness left in them, they might at least have a guilty conscience afterwards. But no, they don't even have that, at least as far as the commentaries say. They're so hard-hearted that they no longer feel anything. For them, killing is the same whether it's a fly, an animal, or a human being. So they forcibly remove all obstacles to their desires, no matter what they may be. But inevitably, the demonic ways of people like that, like violent criminals, always culminate in some kind of violent death of their own. And when they're in jail, it's usually at the hands of their fellow prison mates. The inmates just kill them when they get in there. So they think they are the Lord of the entire world. Well, I can't blame them, because I thought the same thing when I was 21. And I couldn't understand why people wouldn't bow down to me. It was really strange. I thought everybody should recognize my greatness. But actually, the demons or demonic people think like that forever. I was a demon for some time, I guess. Amma actually does say that we are the king of the universe, but for a different reason. In Awakened Children, she says, Vedanta tells us, you are the king of kings, you are not a beggar. This awareness about ourselves helps us awaken the infinite power within us. But until we realize this oneness through direct experience, we have to discriminate between good and evil and progress along the right path. So you might have been watching Amma's live stream the other day when one of the kids, it was so funny, Amma was scolding one of the boys. It's usually the boys do the naughty things, right, I guess. These boys are starting to fight during the meditation, and somebody is instigating everybody and then pretending like he didn't do anything. So Amma caught him red-handed. And she says, you're the one creating the problems, so don't try to fool me. And then he says, Amma, you can call me whatever name you want. You can call me Ravana, Kamsa, Duryodhana, Hiranyakashipu. These are all the demons in the mythological or the stories in India. And he says, you can call me whatever you want, but I know I am the Atman. Amma just, she went like this. She's like, I can't believe these kids. And it was so funny. She was like, now it's like the devil's using the scriptures to justify himself. But in the end, she said that it's these kids, it's their attachment to Amma that makes them say things like that. So she says, I hope that they stay like that for the rest of their life, clinging on to Amma sari, no matter whatever Amma says to them. Go away. They won't go away. They'll just stay near where Amma is. So some people might think, well, aren't demonic people also God? Aren't they also the Atman? Of course they are, definitely. But once we have understood their basic nature, if they have a demonic nature and you know that, it would be foolish if we didn't take that into consideration when you interact with them. They want to borrow money. You have to use your discernment when you deal with such people. And once we know that someone is arrogant, foolish, and has poor judgment, we simply cannot claim any claim of theirs to saying, I'm God, I'm Atman, why don't you treat me like that or something. It's just not the reality of their experience. In fact, it's probably the opposite of their actual experience. But a realized being does not identify themselves with the body. So here's somebody who completely identifies with the body, but says, I'm the Atman, whereas the realized beings don't identify with the body, but they don't say that they're Atman, they don't say that they're realized. They wouldn't never say that. Amma's never done that. So for Amma, when she says I, it's a reference to pure consciousness, the Atman. But when these demonic people talk about I, they're just talking about the body. So in Amma's case, it's not arrogance, it's a wisdom, or it's just a plain fact for her. So in Krishna's description, he also includes some tip-off lines that help us distinguish the difference between someone who just says that they're, the Atman, and someone who has realized that. The quotation that Krishna is saying, he says, I enjoy, I am successful, powerful, and happy. All of these things are actually, the anatma. Enjoying pleasures is something that only happens for non-realized people. People who think they're successful. Well, if you're successful, the only true success, according to Amma, is realizing yourself, knowing who you truly are. But instead of that, they say these things and they overindulge in all kinds of pleasures. So as a result, they identify with the body even more, and they become a slave of pleasure. So that can happen to us as well. We can change from the one who enjoys something to the one who is addicted to that enjoyment. In extreme cases, people might consider it a success, even if they had to harm other people. For us, harming other people is an automatic disqualification for success. Same thing goes for power. I used to think that strength was a physical attribute, and when I was getting ready to join the military, which never happened, I was running around, working out every morning, jogging, swimming, and all this stuff. And I thought, now I'm strong. I didn't have a clue. Because when I went to Puri for the first time and saw how Amma and all her disciples behaved there, I thought, wait a second, I have to redefine strength completely. I'll give you an example. This was not in Puri, it was on US tour a long time ago. It was in San Ramon, I can still remember. It was very long, Devi Baba. If you've been there for one of them, you'll know that by the time Devi Baba ends, it's completely light outside. It's probably 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11 a.m. in the morning when it ends. So it was a long, strenuous Devi Baba, and you know, Amma stands up at the end, and she has these flowers in her hand, and she showers everybody with flowers, and everybody goes in a circle to make sure that they get some flowers, blessed with the flowers from Amma. And then right before the curtains close, Amma just stands there in the middle with the flowers in her hands, right? It's such a divine impression on our mind, we can never forget it. But I've never seen this before or after. While she was holding those and looking out at the crowd, she pointed at somebody. And we were like, who is she pointing at? There's thousands of people out there. She just kept pointing. And then she told somebody something. I was holding the curtain, actually, so I couldn't move. And it turned out that there was one family that didn't get darshan. I know this person. I don't know her name or much about her and her kids, but I know she's a single mother, and they were struggling to make ends meet. A lot of struggles in their life. And they were in the middle of the crowd, but they hadn't got darshan. And of thousands of people there, she has 3 kids too. So of all these people there, she saw her, recognized that she hadn't come, and she said, bring her over here, and the whole family. So they came on the stage. She was about to close the curtains, but no. She waited for them to make their way through the crowd, climbed on the stage, got their darshan. They were crying so powerfully. It was just like really powerful tears. It's the only way I can put it. And after they had their darshan, she did it very patiently, a very long darshan for all of them. Then they went down, and then the curtain closed. Now, if you had been staying up, how many hours is that? Starts at about 9. I mean, the darshan does. 9, 12. It's like over 12 hours. It's like 15 hours you're sitting there. You would have seen this. I don't know, if it's me, I would say, oh, they didn't come. I'll get them next time. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. No way. She has infinite strength when it comes to compassion. So demonic people think they are happy, but it's only when things go their way. If one little thing goes wrong, they immediately become upset, angry, or maybe even depressed. We see all these famous people, Hollywood stars and everything. They have so much money and the adulation of so many people. But from what I understand, a lot of them have very short tempers, and they can't enjoy their lives because of that. So let's not envy such people. We have our own issues to deal with. So focus on those, and we will certainly feel more contentment in our lives. We'll go on to the next verse now. Verse 15. Adhyo bijanavanasmi konyosti sadrisho maya yakshe dasyami modisha ityajnana vimohitaha. Now we'll read it together slowly without stopping. Adhyo bijanavan asmi konyosti sadrisho maya yakshe dasyami modishya ityajnana vimohitaha. I didn't change a whole lot. I changed large family to highborn. That's about it. And I put 2 gods in parentheses. So it reads like this: I am wealthy and highborn, Who else is equal to me? I will sacrifice. And the intention is that it's to God, so we put that in parentheses. I will give in charity. I will enjoy. Thus are they deluded by ignorance. So the commentary, Shankaracharya says, I am born, he says that high birth means I'm born in a family learned in the scriptures, and he just throws in for 7 generations to make it sound like a big deal. Even in this respect, none is equal to me. I will surpass others, even in respect of sacrificial rites. I will give money and obtain great joy. He's talking about doing things that are spiritual, but it's in a competitive way. I won't let anybody donate any more than I do. I have to be the greatest in donating. And Jnanadev has a lot of things to say here. The first thing is really cute. He talks about Kubera. If you've heard of Kubera, you would know that he is the Lord of wealth. Not like Saraswati. Saraswati is actually one facet of Devi. She is a real, one facet of God, which we can just call God, period. But Kubera is like a demigod who actually, if you do lots of good deeds, you someday might be able to become Kubera, but I don't recommend doing that. It's a waste of time. Anyhow, Kubera is the god of wealth. So this is what Jnanadev says. He's pretending to be like these demonic people. He says, Kubera is no doubt rich, but he does not know the extent of my riches. Of course, he's getting all the riches from Kubera in the first place, but anyhow. Even the Lord of Goddess Lakshmi, now he's talking about Vishnu, cannot reach my level and riches. So he has insulted the goddess Lakshmi. He's not going to survive long, anybody who says that. Even God Brahmadev, this is one of the Trinity, would look small compared to the greatness and extent of my dynasty and kinsmen. Therefore, none of those who parade the name of God in vain can match my worth. I shall now revive the black magic that has vanished and establish sacrificial institutions causing pain to beings. What is he talking about? I shall become bliss incarnate in all the 3 worlds by torturing people? Strange. Invigorating myself with diverse intoxicating dishes and drinks, and enjoying the embrace of many women. Well, good luck with that one. Why? And then after the quote is over, Jnanadev says, why prolong such talk? These madmen of demonic temperament look forward with greed to smelling their imaginary sky flowers. So all their imaginations are like flowers in the sky. We would say pie in the sky. So this description of the person of demonic nature continues. So he says, I'm wealthy, even though the wealth was acquired through very dubious means. Even still, they claim to be a cultured person. You beat somebody up for their money and then you say you're cultured. So just to make it clear, in old days, highborn just meant you had good culture. Your parents were very righteous and pure-hearted people, so you learned that from them. So here he's saying that I'm highborn, but he doesn't have the qualities of such a person. He doesn't have good culture. Maybe because it's Kali Yuga, it's now the opposite. Who knows? His ancestors may have culture, but he certainly doesn't have any. And then he says, who else is equal to me? That's a perfect example of extreme arrogance. And there are other people who make it their job to praise such megalomaniacs. You may know somebody like that, because they have this subtle desire. They want to get some benefits from these megalomaniacs. So the megalomaniacs like to have these people around them, and they like to be around that person because they think they might be able to get some money or something from them. They have their own world around them. And then he says, I will sacrifice to the gods, I will give in charity. Now, why in the world would such a person want to do things like this? It's not that they suddenly got some devotion or faith in God or the scriptures or anything. They do it just to show off and get other people's attention. So let's say this guy gives $1,000, I'm going to donate $2,000. And I see what he does. He donates 10,000. I'm going to donate 20,000. It's like an auction. Do I hear 50? No, 100, 200, whatever. He'll go as high as he can just to make sure that the other guy doesn't donate more than him. So along with that attitude, they expect to be treated like a king or queen whenever they show up. I've donated this much money. How can you insult me like this? So like this, each one of their actions, even in the area of spirituality or religion, it all goes to inflate their ego. Here we are struggling so hard to deflate our egos and dethrone the mind who wants to be glorified all the time, and they're busy inflating it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm succeeding at deflating my ego, but just to go the exact opposite direction is kind of unthinkable for us. And Krishna is going to talk about this more in the next chapter, so we won't go into that too much. He says, I will enjoy. And then the commentary from Krishna is, thus are they deluded by ignorance. So the rejoicing or the enjoyment is in their mind. It's a delusion. Coming from their ignorance. They don't understand the truth self. They don't understand anything about spirituality. So they get deluded, and then they celebrate after every materialistic quest is completed. I burned down that guy's store, so now we're the only store in town. Yay. They have these kind of pleasures. And they don't have the discernment to realize that there is another way of living, a way that is much, much more satisfying, easier too. And it's full of contentment and conducive to mental peace. Now, Lord Krishna explains the outcome of their delusion. Just in case you were thinking of following in their footsteps, you should hear what he has to say in verse 16. Aneka chitta vibhranta mohajala samavritaha prasaktha kamabhogeshu patanti narakeshu chau. I'll change one thing here. Bewildered as they are by many a fancy idea, enveloped in a net of delusion. Slight change. Addicted to sense enjoyments, they fall down into the foulest hell. So not much different from the book. Let's hear the commentary now. Shankaracharya says, such as those described above. In other words, this is what happens to the people who he just described Krishna just described from 13 to 15. Delusion is a snare. You know, a snare is what you catch an animal with, usually when you're hunting. Delusion is a snare as it is of the nature of an enclosure or envelope. It keeps you locked up, right? They are addicted to sensual gratification, and with sins thus accumulated, they fall into a foul hell, such as Vaitarani. What is Vaitarani? Well, according to the Puranas, which are India's sort of mythological lore, somewhat based on truth and on actual fact, but mostly they're the tales of morals and whatnot. So what is this river like? According to the Puranas, this Vaitarana river, when they call it, it's Vaitarani, but the name is Vaitarana river. It lies between earth and hell. It's kind of like the Greek river Styx. Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that the Greek? Yeah, Greek world, right? It's much like that, but this has its own flavor, if you want to call that. It's between earth and hell, so hell is the realm of Lord Yama, the god of death. And it is said that this river purifies one's sins. So when a righteous person, or someone who's done a lot of good deeds, sees that river, they see it as being filled with nectar-like water. But if it's somebody who's done a lot of bad deeds, that same river is seen as being full of blood, pus, urine, feces, and so on. But they have to cross that river after death. So that's the world they have to live in. Not very pleasant, I would imagine. Jnanadev says, demonic people rave fancifully at random, as though they were delirious from a fever. They find themselves in the whirlwind of expectation, owing to the dust of ignorance accumulating in them. Now, in terms of ignorance accumulating inside of oneself, I think all of us have that to a degree. We're not always going towards Amma or towards the goal of life 24 hours a day. You know, we may be going backwards and piling up a little bit of dust. So that's why Amma says, you know, even if you don't hurt other people, just be sure that you don't create any more vasanas. And if we do, we're adding more dust on top of the mirror that helps us to see our true self. The result is that they keep on going round and round in the void of their imaginations. What a beautiful analogy. Going round and around in the void of our imaginations, and it's so true. That shows that we have demonic characteristics. Then they build castles in the air regarding innumerable desires, like the countless clouds in the sky in the rainy season, or like the uninterrupted waves of the sea. In such a state, the infatuation in their hearts goes on increasing, like the intensity of darkness as night advances. The greater the infatuation, the greater the liking for the enjoyment of sense objects. You might think, well, I'm not interested in sense objects. Well, everything, anything your eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and your skin feel, that's all sensory pleasure. So we are slaves to one or another, or all five of them. So we have to be more aware of that. And then Jnanadev describes what hell is like. So this could be like the description of a hotel, and on what is that called? TripAdvisor, right? The hotel hell. Oh, I think that was a really bad movie. Therefore, such people end up dwelling in a place full of trees with sharp-edged leaves like swords. Wow. Mountains of live charcoal and tempestuous seas of boiling oil. Want to go for a swim? No. There they meet with more and more agonies as ever new sorts of tortures arranged by the god of death. They even perform, so that's hell. Now he's coming back to when they're on earth. They even perform sacrifices in an obsessed state. Their sacrifices are like dramatic performances on a stage, or like a prostitute living under the protection of her lover, but parading around as a loyal wife. Pretty hard, tough truth. Another more modern commentator has said, whatever is in our mind is projected onto the world outside, regarded as an external reality. Thus, the external world is heaven to the pure-hearted, but to the demonic at heart, the same world offers a spectacle of foul hell. So this is one perception of hell, is that it's on this very planet. It's just the way you look at the world and the people in it. We'll come back to that in a moment. So this, from this verse on, we're again hearing Krishna's voice. He's not representing somebody else anymore. And he's saying that their minds are completely deluded by endless thoughts related to their materialistic fantasies, which he described in verses 13 to 15. They're so fixated on their desires that the mind is never free to question the validity of their goals or the means. They're so obsessed, they don't think twice, like, is it okay to rob somebody? It just doesn't come in their mind. And they don't have an ear to listen to anybody else either. So the delusion is here compared to a net. It's completely enveloped them. That means there's no space for any suggestions or advice to fit. So they're in their own world, they're listening to their imagination, and they're unable to hear any advice, much less practice any advice. So that's another reason why they cannot and do not avail the wisdom of self-realized beings, elders, or even their friends. So he says, addicted to sense enjoyments, they fall down into the foulest hell. So, I mean, they're so totally given over to sense pleasures that nobody can help them, and not even God. Why can't God help them? Because they don't want God's help. Like Duryodhana, he didn't want Krishna. He wanted the army, which represents materialism. So Krishna couldn't help him because Duryodhana already made his choice. So they don't want help, and they think that they're on the right track already. So let's say you go to visit them and say, I really want to, help you get out of this. They won't listen to you. They'll say, by the way, I want to get some more drugs or something. Can you give me some money? So you fail, and they ask you for money. Anything can happen with such a person. And even if they by chance think of God or remember God, it's to make God his accomplice in doing bad deeds. So what's the outcome? Well, they get sent to boarding school, which is called Naraka Loka, or otherwise known as hell. So for kids, it's like boarding school is like hell. So if you're naughty, you get sent to boarding school. Well, here in the universe, if you're naughty, you get sent to Naraka Loka. Worldly beings call it suffering, but from the standpoint of spirituality, it's actually just a kind of a treatment for the delirium of our inexhaustible desires. So we need it. It's like medicine for our condition. Amma has also said that suffering is a tremendous teacher and purifier also. And when she was growing up, she would always say, I want to have this pain always because then I can remember you all the time. Give me your work. Give me more work. Give me more work, but it should be your work. So for her, all the hardships just turned her closer and closer to God, even though she was already divine from birth. But she enacted this whole drama so that we would learn from her. Once we've suffered enough, we get another chance as a human being. We get out of boarding school and come back to home, this world. And the process repeats itself until they, or we ourselves, sober up and the fever for worldly pleasures reduces. Because that's positive proof that the treatment is complete. Now, why did he have to say the foulest hell? Foul here means just suffering and sorrow. So the more suffering and pain, the faster the cure. So there's no need to question the existence of such a hell, because by now all of us probably would have felt we would have been through some kind of hellishly painful experience in the past, where we felt completely helpless and without any control. That's why Amma says that both heaven and hell are right here, right now, on this planet. We don't have to wait until we die to experience hell or heaven. That's much like what Jnanadev was saying. But if you read the scriptures or the Puranas mostly, you'll see that there's a bit of a contrast. They don't talk about heaven being on earth, even though this earth, Bhuloka, is the first of 7 layers or levels of heaven. But the idea is that the higher worlds and the lower worlds are not perceptible to our eyes or anything. You cannot see them. They're like an alternate dimension. And there's 7 hells and 7 heavens. So we're right now at like level 1 heaven. Then there's 7 minus 1, minus 2, down to minus 7. So Bhuloka is the first of the heavens, and the highest is Satyaloka. The 7 nether worlds start with Atala Loka, which seems like it's pleasurable, but in the end it's really painful. And the worst is Patala Loka, which is like the hell of hells, basically. And we cannot prove any of these. You know, maybe we experience them, but then you forget. It's only an article of faith, so people who don't believe in it, they just disregard it completely. But anyhow, they'll get a different body, and that body, when they go to one of these nether worlds, that body is equipped in such a way that you can really suffer a whole lot. The body in the heaven is to allow you to enjoy more and more higher pleasures. So with the hells, the 7 hells below earth, that means it's the opposite. You're getting bodies that have increasing capacity to feel pain. Sorry, that's how it is, I'm told. So it's like the explanation of the Vaitarani river in the Puranas. So we can also say that both of these viewpoints are correct in one way. The heaven and hell on earth is correct, and heaven and hell in another dimension could be true also. Because if a person's good or bad karma is really extreme, it's possible that the reward or punishment that they need cannot be experienced on earth. A tremendous heaven they need to go to in order to experience their good karma. Or if they did something just horrendous, you might be able to envision some historical figures. They can't get the punishment enough on earth. They have to go to some really terrible place to get the full brunt of their karma. So, take it whichever way you want. The meaning is clear. So what about their yajnas, about their pujas? What are demonic pujas like? What do they look like, and how do they feel when they're doing these things? Let's hear about that in verse 17. Atma Sambhavita Stabdha Dhanamana Madanvitaha Yajante Namayajnaiste Dambhena Vidhi Purvakam. Now together. Atma Sambhavita Stabdha Dhanamana Madanvitaha Yajante Namayajnaiste Dambhena Vidhi Purvakam. It's almost the same. Intoxicated by wealth and fame, self-conceited, stubborn, full of pride, they perform sacrifices just for name, out of ostentation, disregarding, and in parentheses, Vedic injunctions. So the commentary. So Jnanadev says that they assume greatness and get puffed up with extraordinary pride. I think we already got that. In that state, though, they cannot bend down. They're like a cast iron pillar. Know anybody like that? Cast iron pillar will never bow down to anybody or never ask for forgiveness. They are fully convinced that they are the best behaved people, and consequently, they treat all others as more worthless than grass. On top of all this, they are completely intoxicated by the liquor of their wealth. Too much wealth means you're going to get drunk on it. And they give not a thought to right and wrong. How could one with such a mentality take to sacrifices? They don't need the fire pit. They don't need the yajñashala where you do the homa. They don't need an altar. They don't even need the sacrificial offerings, because they always disregard the injunctions of the scriptures. They cannot even tolerate the breeze that carries God's name. Then what to say of a genuine place of prayer and puja? Cunning people stuff the skin of a dead calf, making it look like a live calf, and place it in front of the cow so it will produce milk. Isn't that a terrible trick? My gosh. In a similar way, demonic people greedily invite huge crowds and demand gifts from them. They perform sacrifices with an eye to profit, desire, and ruining the lives of others. It's crazy. And then a more modern commentator says, the performance of rituals has undergone change with the passage of time. Amma said that too. These days, yajna, which means a ritual like an offering, sacred offering, yajna has become scarce, having been replaced by temple worship. Today, people build temples for self-advertisement, conducting religious celebrations for pomp and show, and who arrange exorbitant worship in temples for name and fame. So the first thing he says in this verse is that they always glorify themselves. It's called Atmastuti, which is kind of a funny word because the self, the true self, should always be glorified. But for them, the Atma is not the Satchidananda Atma, it's just them, it's me. So Atmastuti means they're glorifying themselves, not God. They would be the last ones to glorify God, probably. You know what I mean? In other words, God is just the stuffed animal. That's what he is. And then so they just put them there, plop. Now everybody look at me. So it's really bad. So the claim to have donated so much money and given so many things, they might even claim that they virtually built an entire temple. But the fact that they are still taking credit for it just means that no donation or giving ever took place in reality, because they're still clinging to the money as though it was still theirs. People who talk about it all the time, it's like, you didn't give it, you're still hanging on to it because you're taking the credit for it. The best way, which you're going to find out in chapter 17, is don't let anybody know that you're making any kind of donations or you're building something. You should just go as one of the devotees that goes there. And he says they are also very stubborn. They cannot bow down before anyone. And that means the opposite of that is they can't respect anybody either. They will think, why should I bow in front of him? He should be bowing to me. And so out of their stubborn, stiff ego, people like Duryodhana would never bow down to Krishna. If he had just bowed down to Krishna even once, I need your help, he would have survived. But he was so stubborn. So that's another quality that we add to the list. And these people, they may do yajnas, they may do a homa or a puja or something, and some of them do many, many pujas. But it's all in name only. Why? Because the most important part of the yajna is missing. What do you mean? We have the flowers, we have the fire, we have all these photos and idols of the deities around here. How can you say that the most important thing is missing? Then you go back to chapter 9, verse 26, and you remember what Krishna said. Whoever offers me with devotion, okay? Offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, that I partake of the loving gift of the pure-minded. So no devotion, no love, and no purity. Sorry, it's not a yajna at all. It's not all these big showy things that make the yajna. It's not like how much donation you give. It's not like if, let's say, you're a pujari and you're doing it for money, you may have wonderful mudras, or you may chant the mantras beautifully, but that doesn't make the puja or homa complete. These can also be done just physically. You chant something. It can just be a physical action without any devotion. Same with the mudras. Same with putting things here, moving there, splashing water all over the place. It doesn't mean you have devotion. So all of that can be imitated, but a yajna is complete only when the spirit of sacred offering is there. For demonic people, this is the one thing that is missing. So everything they do is in name only. The yajna may be big, bright, colorful, loud. They have all these instruments going, but you don't feel any devotion. It's like a beautiful woman or a handsome man, but devoid of life. Externally, they are impressive, but the soul is missing. So that's what their, rituals are like, ceremonies. For us, it seems pointless to conduct a yajna without devotion, but these people don't mind, because they have other intentions, namely, showing their glory. They want to show off to others to how great they are. And this is, for these people, their equation is great, huge, expensive yajna equals great, huge, rich person. That's what they think. So they do it for that purpose, to make people think that they're great. Now, if this were a wedding, the wedding equivalent of this would be like the groom and bride wear their nice clothes, they eat the delicious food, and they dance on the dance floor, but when it comes time to take the wedding vows, they have someone else do it. I'm too busy, dancing or drinking or something like that. You guys do the wedding vows. Somebody else. So it's like the most important thing is missing, and everything on the periphery is what they're interested in. This is the gist of the verse when Krishna says, disregarding injunctions. They pay no heed to the most important parts. And in the next chapter, Krishna will call this tamasic yajna, the lowest of the low. Tamas, as you know, is indolence and darkness, ignorance. But you can still do some kind of yajna or puja with that state of mind. It just doesn't look very good. He says, the sacrifice done with no respect to injunctions and in which no food is distributed to the poor, which is devoid of mantras, in other words, chanting out with devotion, which is devoid of gifts and faith, that is said to be tamasic. So even in Krishna's time, poor guy, there were people doing this kind of stuff with very, barbaric ideas in their mind. So we can assume that it's going to continue. So at least we ourselves should not be like that. Well, after all of these descriptions, we would think that Krishna is done talking about demonic people. No, he has 5 more verses to go. So that's going to be next time. And I don't know if we'll finish all 5 of them, but he's not done with us. He wants us to hear more nasty things about these people. It's all, the reason for this is that he's trying to help us see that we have some of these qualities and that we have to get rid of them. And then when new ones are trying to make way into our mind, we have to close the gate, and just lock all the doors and windows so that they don't affect us. Because if they do, they come and they spread. It's like COVID, and then they actually ruin our whole life. We can potentially end up like people like this. And there were 2 very good questions that came, and I wanted to put something like a response together. I've been traveling the past 3 days, so I thought instead of just giving it little importance, I will take the proper time. And there's a few things I want to say about those questions, and I wanted to look for some of Amma's teachings that go along with it, so I'll do that next week, if you don't mind. And I think all of us will get more out of it as a result. So today, we are ending a little early, and we will say our first 2 prayers, and then we will meditate and conclude with that. So with these 2 closing prayers, the Gita class is actually over. If you need to go somewhere, don't worry. If you have time, you can stay a bit longer and meditate with us. Namah Shivaya. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Amiteshwarya Namaha. Let us take this opportunity to meditate and introspect. Close your eyes. Check your posture to make sure your spine is straight. Slow down your breathing process. And take a few long, deep breaths. With each deep inhalation and exhalation, Feel the body and mind relaxing further and further. Feel Amma's subtle presence around you as well, as though you are enveloped in her arms, feeling the warmth of her body. You can feel her inside as well. We melt in her arms, and she in our arms as well. Now shift your awareness to the rhythmic flow of your breathing process. Be fully conscious of every single inhalation and exhalation. As you focus your awareness on the breath, take one step back mentally and simply witness that flow. You are not participating in the breath. You are simply watching, and the breath flows on its own. In that state of witnessing, objectively look at your own mind. However small it might be, the demonic tendencies exist within us as well. It may be anger, greed, desires. All of these negative qualities Krishna has been explaining. We have those seeds within us. Rather than hiding from them, let us own up to the presence of these characteristics. As we recognize each one of those characteristics, let us acknowledge how much we need Amma's help to completely uproot those vasanas. Try to surrender them to her. When we come to terms with the difficulty of removing even one negative quality, we can feel tremendous compassion for those who have tremendous amounts of negative qualities, like Krishna is describing. Even now, the terrible things going on in the world, we need not look farther than that to find a hell or demonic qualities on earth. Let us pray that the people of even more demonic tendencies are touched and moved to see some kind of compassion so they stop hurting others. Let us try to send them thoughts and vibrations of compassion and peace. Perhaps we can make a tiny difference in the world, as Amma says. We can visualize white flowers of peace falling upon those calamitous areas as well as those who have provoked it. Now let us conclude with the final prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnaad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you breathe out, you can slowly open your eyes if you wish. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Thank you for joining us, and we will have the Gita class again on Thursday. And please do participate in Amma's live stream. This is the main dish going forward. And we can't even present any hors d'oeuvres. It's all Amma's feast every day. So please sign up for that as the live programs are gradually winding down, it seems, as far as I know. Om Namah Shivaya.